my YouTube and my Instagram pages were created solely to build a core group of people who are interested in what I do. So then when I have something to offer, they're already there.
This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode, my friends, my music friends, my musician friends, music pros, fans of indie music. It is great to be in your earbuds or on your speakers today. It's been a while. I think it's been about 4 weeks. This move from Panama to Querétaro was a lot more time-consuming than I realized it would be. It's as though I forgot what it's like to relocate to another country, especially one that's not your original home or your second home. But we made it. Settling in was a long process and a lot of the time. Today is July 4th as I'm recording this intro, and I'm enjoying a celebratory cerveza. Hey, go figure, I can't say celebratory. Cerveza Artesanal by Brewdog. I was thinking it was made in Mexico because I've been buying beers from made in Mexico, some artisanal beers lately. But no, this one's made in Northern Ireland. I hope everyone's good with that. It's a lovely pale ale by a company called Brewdog. And let's see here. This one is called Planet Pale. It's pretty good. I thought this was just a Mexican artisanal thing, but I've noticed that the micro brews that I've bought are over the top. I've noticed an elevated carbonation level. But alas, I think it's the altitude here in Querétaro. We're at about 6,000 feet above sea level, because this puppy from Northern Ireland also requires a little breathing time, if you know what I mean, outgassing time. So anyway, yes, happy Independence Day to those of you who observe it. May we all rediscover our independence soon in this crazy, nutty, bizarro world we live in. On the personal music front, I have connected with some local musicians here in Querétaro, and I've been out to see a couple of live bands, been super impressed. One was a cover band, but they had marvelous arrangements of a number of funk tunes and R&B tunes and rock tunes that they turned into their own funk versions. Very talented group of musicians. And I actually got a thing going with a couple of fellow expats and a local guy, one of whom is in one of the live bands I've recently seen, and maybe a local gal vocalist soon, maybe. We'll see how that works out. She's super good. Super good. I hope it works out. But we'll see. And my good friend Fiddle Joe Patterson, who I know from Panama. He's a fellow expat and a fellow musician, more importantly. Fiddle Joe joined Music Marketing Method, the program created by Linz Crichton, who's been on this podcast. She created it to help musicians find their fan base, grow their audience, and set foundations for a music business that can make money. I'm in the program, and maybe you should be too. Only you can know the answer to that. To learn more about Music Marketing Method, to see if it's right for you, go to unstarvingmusician.com/music marketing. If it turns out to be a good mutual fit, you'll be supporting the podcast while investing in the business of your music. And oh, by the way, there are many ways to support this podcast, and they don't all involve a monetary investment. This podcast exists in large part through the generosity of listeners like you. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. All right, on to today's episode. I don't even know what number this is. We're getting way up there, but this one is based on episode number 1. It's the first ever Rewind episode where I'm digging deep into past episodes of the podcast. I've had so many conversations and not enough note-taking. That reminds me of an Elvis song. Too much conversation or not enough conversation and too much something. I don't know. I gotta go find that tune. But lots of conversations, very interesting ones, and not enough archival note-taking on my part. So what I'm going to do with this series that I've been looking very forward to is I'm going to dissect past conversations to extrapolate things that perhaps warrant further consideration by me and maybe by you. Hopefully all useful stuff for you, my esteemed musician, music professional listener. So in this episode, I go all the way back to episode number 1, which featured Mike Dawson. He is the former longtime managing editor at Modern Drummer magazine. He's now chief creative officer at Drum Factory Direct. He's host of the Drum Candy podcast, formerly co-host of the Modern Drummer podcast. The Drum Candy podcast, however, his new one is the definitive podcast for gear-obsessed drummers. That's the way they pitch it, and I think he's right. Mike knows how to dig deep into gear and all things drumming. I mean, yeah, take a listen. You'll see what I mean, especially if you're a drummer. Mike has a master's in music performance from the University of Arts, Philadelphia. He also studied music at West Virginia University and did the whole high school band thing starting in the 5th grade, plus county events, all-county band, all-county percussion ensemble. I mean, he was in it. That education is a relevant part of our conversation, and I believe very relevant to who he is and even who he was professionally. So I ask about his education and about participating in band, high school band, during and throughout his primary school years. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I did. I mean, from 5th grade through, I did the school band all the way through. Marching band, concert band, jazz band. Sometimes I played musical theater for the school. I did, what else did I do? Percussion ensemble, pretty much anything that was offered. There wasn't a ton offered, but whatever was available, I was in it. We had like county events too, like all county band, all county percussion ensemble, all that stuff. I think I will never be able to quantify how important it was, honestly. It's like I could, on every gig, I'm referencing subconsciously something that I learned as a teenager or a child playing with different ensembles. So I think one thing, it set me up technically because playing in those ensembles, especially in high school when I got in the marching band, I mean, I was trying to be the best rudimental drummer in the state. So all that technique I practiced early, which was not just speed and power, but also control and precision, rudiments. All that stuff comes into play every time I play. Dynamics, I learned dynamics very, very young. I was 9 years old playing snare drum with the concert band, and the snare drum was always too loud. So I learned how to play very, very quietly, at a really young age. Playing in musical theater, I learned how to follow a conductor really well, even while I was playing drum set, like playing beats and stuff, because those songs, you have to follow the singer always. So if they want to go a little bit faster, we have to go with them. So I learned all these crucial musical techniques just by being involved in all this stuff. Sometimes trial by fire, sometimes just my natural instincts kind of guided me the right way. But when it comes into gigging these days, because I can read music really well and I can transcribe music really well, I have no problem taking, cover band gigs on 48 hours notice. I can just chart songs out and get through the gig. And I've studied all the different styles, so I rarely come across a song I have to learn for a gig that's like a totally new beat or a totally new style that I've never tried before. What else? I mean, just work ethic. I learned so much about work ethic being in band, because drums are not easy and you sound really bad for several years. So just the, learning to persevere through all of the frustrations. And I mean, there were definitely, I punched holes in my wall as a teenager going through all the coordination issues of learning the drum set. And so yeah, it's like, I can't even begin to, if I hadn't done all of that, I don't know that I would have started playing drums later, and I know I definitely wouldn't be able to do what I do now without having, every day from age 9 through 18 as part of my regular schooling.
Mike has a a great career performing and recording music and in the music business. I remember that part of our conversation that you just listened to was super fascinating for me at the time and still is. I suppose that speaking from my own life experience and personal observation, if you have a kid or you're a young listener who aspires to be a musician, let them explore and give your kid the opportunity to pursue the relevant education. It's not the end all beat all, I suppose, but if your kid or you, young listener, are in the right place, you're the right kind of person, it can make a world of difference. But don't be discouraged. We've all heard the stories about the self-taught and very successful music artist. And Mike also says that among his peers, about half are self-taught. Listen to this. Do you meet many musicians that work at your level or that you work with that don't have some sort of similar background in terms of their education, their formal education?
Yeah, probably. If it's not 50-50, it probably weighs to the majority of people or more self-taught and self-instructed or never went through school, just took lessons or something of that sort. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what level of gig it is. What I found that when I get into, or when I'm, meeting people who are playing more high profile gigs, it tends to sway the other way, where they have more experience and more education and more, like most of them can read music. Like that becomes more of the case in certain genres. I mean, there's successful rock bands that don't know any of the chords they're playing, but like if you're talking about jazz or any of that kind of art form, it tends to go the other way, where probably the vast majority who are schooled or formally schooled.
Sure.
So in my life, I mean, there's definitely in every gig there might be, the bass player might have never taken a lesson in his life. The guitarist might have a master's degree. It goes back and forth, but probably slightly favors the non-schooled player for the working musician who plays clubs on the weekends and mostly top 40 type stuff. That seems to be the case.
In this next clip of our conversation, Mike and I talk dynamics, which are so important, no matter your instrument. This fact seems to be lost on lots of otherwise good musicians, I have found. If you're a drummer, you would really benefit from getting good with your dynamics and learning how to lead your band in dynamic changes. You can easily do this with practice and even on stage audibles. And here is Mike discussing the ever-important skill of dynamics.
Had I not have studied classical music, which basically when I think of studying classical music, you're learning touch and sensitivity and dynamics more than anything. It's all about producing the right sound at the right dynamic at the right time. It's very rarely about playing a difficult part. So anyway, I was in high school playing all the community theater gigs in my town. So every summer that's basically how I made money, was playing community theater. And one summer it was a small theater production in a black box style theater, which if you're not familiar, it's just a square room where the musicians and the actors are all like on the floor together. And we were doing the Who's Tommy and no microphones, everything was just open air. So I was having to play like Keith Moon while playing at a dynamic below the volume of the child singer, because it was actually a youth musical. So you've got children, teenagers who don't have a full voice yet singing the Who's Tommy, and I'm having to play like a crazy Keith Moon in the back. So, and I was probably 17, so it was just another, again, like thankfully I had learned to play very quietly as a young player, because I couldn't have done that. How could you possibly play that music at an inch off the drums and not have it just sound silly? So yeah, dynamics have been number one for me since the very beginning, without even realizing it. I just knew it. I just had to. I couldn't work if I couldn't play quieter than a singer.
Yeah. And I venture to say that you wouldn't have even been invited to do it had you not been known for having that, accumulator required that skill set of dynamics already.
Yeah, possibly.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, what I realize is that a drummer who can play quietly is hard to come by. It really is.
I've seen this myself too.
Yeah.
Not only are drummers who can play quietly hard to come by, it's true for most players, I found. And So work on your dynamics and on your skill for leading other musicians in changes of dynamics. It really does help you stand out. And heck, even if you're totally seasoned, check in with yourself on your skill in the department of dynamics and leading your fellow musicians in changes of that nature. I initially learned dynamics playing for a chamber singers group in college. That is a group of nothing but singers and a drummer. So that was an awakening for me. But I also learned appreciation for dynamics by listening to live recordings by Led Zeppelin, believe it or not. That band could go from a thunderous volume to a whisper in a heartbeat. In this next segment, we discuss Mike's current passion, or his passion at the time we spoke, for things that were authentic or emotional, original. He was working on a few different projects of varying styles, and that variety presented Mike with challenges which he really enjoyed. And it really speaks to the value of being diverse as a musician, I think, being open to trying new things for the sake of a challenge, but also for the opportunity to grow in your art of music. You'll also learn in this clip that this diversity and discipline allows Mike to work in highly, highly professional situations and gigs. Listen to this.
I've kind of enjoyed everything that is at least has some sort of authenticity or creativity or emotional element to it. So I'm always trying a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm currently playing with a really loud modern rock band, which kind of satisfies that aesthetic.
Yeah.
I'm a 90s kid, Nirvana was one of my favorite bands. So it kind of satisfies that of just getting to just go and just let loose and sweat and all that.
Yeah.
I also play in an ensemble. It's a trio that is electronic based. They call it Latin folkloric electronica. So it has elements of Andean folkloric music and then electronic music. So I'm triggering samples and loops while also playing kind of tribally acoustic drums.
Wow.
So that kind of satisfies a certain, a challenge. Like I'm always up for a challenge. And when I got that project, I was like, all right, I have to sound like a machine, but give it the feel of a folkloric percussionist. Okay, great. Let's do it. So that, that is satisfying me in that realm of, it's like I'm trying something that I've never done. No one is playing this stuff, like I'm playing it right now. Not that I'm doing anything different or revolutionary, but I kind of created my own thing with that band.
You may be, you never know.
Yeah. And then I have other projects that are, really professional projects where it's, we show up to the gig, nobody rehearses or anything. You just show up and you play, and it's top notch. The sound is always great, but I'm just playing basic 2 and 4 all night, and it's still very satisfying.
Yeah. Because
the music is just such a high level of professionalism where it feels great to be in a band where you don't have to worry about anyone making mistakes or any of that kind of thing. You just show up, play, people enjoy it. It's awesome. I've found that I really, really love recording. So that's kind of been my primary outlet in the past 8 years or so. I just love the art of recording. It kind of totally satisfies me. All of that stuff that I just talked about in the live world, I can then do in the studio as well. It's always different type of tracks coming in, different artists, different styles. I'm always trying new setups and new mic techniques and new tunings and everything I can do to make that song unique.
In this next part of our conversation, Mike continues on his passion for recording and experimentation in the studio, the art of recording, his morning meditation, and basically the practice of exploration and creative practice, if I can use that word twice in a sentence. Creativity without too much editing is the way he puts it, so he can make something new as often as possible. And this speaks more, I believe, about the diversity of what we do, or keeping ourselves open to trying different things, experimenting with what we do as musicians, and working to create something new and often. In this thread, Mike is going to share his recipe for nurturing his creativity and leveraging that. Check this out.
The electronics and acoustic drums have always fascinated me. Like I bought a drum machine as soon as I had enough money and they were affordable enough for me to buy one. So I like the concept of programming drums and playing over top of it. It's always fascinated me. I think it might be because I kind of started playing drums right when hip hop hit the mainstream. So there was always that like element of a James Brown, really organic sounding drum beat, but then all this electronic hand claps and stuff happening.
Right.
So my goal with especially lately has been to take all this gear that I've amassed, which is a bunch of effects processors and drum pads and things, and not spend too much time preconceiving an idea. So I go down in the studio. This is kind of like my morning meditation, quite honestly. I go down in the studio, I just turn everything on. I just find some sounds in my electronics that inspire me, a pattern that kind of inspires me. I step on the loop pedal, loop what I just did, and then I play the live drums over top of it. I record it, I edit it, and then I post it all within the same, couple hours. So it's all just like a one-time thing. If you asked me to go back and reproduce any of those videos I've ever done, I would have no idea exactly how I did it. It's all pure inspiration, creative practice, exploration, and getting used to the idea of can I record something that I think sounds cool and is creative without thinking too much about it, without practicing it too much, without spending too much time mixing it or editing it or fixing it. Most of those things are, one or two takes. I might do a couple, passes if the looper doesn't work perfectly, but that's largely it. That's kind of been my goal, is to just be something creative, create something new that I've never done before as often as possible, and then not stress out about it. But it's funny because I've had some guitarists and bass players like, dude, let's let's form a trio, but let's do those things that you did. I'm like, sorry, they're gone. I'd have to do completely fresh ideas because those were expelled and they are gone.
Yeah. In this next part of our conversation, Mike talks about why he was getting up so early in the morning to play and record. I don't know if he's still doing this. We spoke back in May of 2017 for this conversation, and you may, I think I mentioned this was episode 1, so I should have mentioned this at the top, but you may notice that the recording quality gets a little different from here to there. Plus, I'm in my new studio in Querétaro. Haven't quite gotten it completely figured out, so I may even sound different when I'm doing my intro stuff here. But yeah, we talk about Mike's morning routine here and how he used it to work in creative time for himself. It's important in that he looks at the limitations of his schedule and worked in that creative time. He also learned something very valuable in the process of doing so. And I kept this in here. I asked him about it because I am a morning ritual kind of person, kind of a ritual person anyway, but especially in the mornings. So I thought this was cool. Whatever time of day you feel a little ritualistic, I think you should take advantage of it. And here, you can hear now how Mike was taking advantage of it at the time of our conversation.
Just because I have to, because my job is 9 to 5. And then by the time I get home after, working at the magazine all day, my brain's usually fried. And then, I also have to spend time with my wife and dogs. And so I don't really get a ton of evening time. The evening time that I have to play music is usually spent on either recording tracks for someone that's waiting for them or, because I have to deliver.
Yeah.
Or I'm just, or I'm doing product demos for Modern Drummer. Like my evening time in the studio and on the drums is usually not creative. It's usually a job specific thing, or I'm playing a gig or I'm rehearsing. So my morning, I have basically a window between 7 a.m. to 8:30 where I try to sneak in some time on the drums. So I'm not a morning person at all. And I learned something kind of cool, which is good. I feel like if I can go down on the drum set, because normally what I do is I wake up, chug a glass of water with some lemon and apple cider vinegar, have a cup of coffee, then go to the drum set. And I found that if I can go to the drum set on like that cold and still play at an acceptable level, when I go to the gig at night, I feel like I'm on fire. Like it's 10 times better. My body's moving smoothly and my brain is clear. So it's been another challenge. Like, can I play well at 7:30, well enough to like deliver a track to somebody and they're going to pay me for it?
I just checked in on Mike's Instagram, which is at Mike Dawson Drums, and he's still posting creative performance clips on the drums. And I recommend you check it out. Again, it's at Mike Dawson Drums. Even if you're not a drummer, it'll give you an idea of what you can do, whatever your instrument or your art is. I asked Mike also about his morning playing as like a warm-up routine for playing later in the day or in the evenings. And he mentions a recommendation that I love, which came from an episode of the Tim Ferriss podcast. It's basically about starting your day with productivity. In the context of being a musician or an artist of any kind, we should consider it starting your day with creativity. This is all within the realm of what I call a nerdy realm of optimizing your life, but I confess I love it.
I think so. I think it's a combination of just throughout the day you're moving your body more, so you're looser, but it's also a confidence builder, which I think is really important. And I kind of picked that up from I listened to a lot of Tim Ferriss's podcasts, and
yeah, so do I.
I believe he had, I think it was General McChrystal was on, and he talked about like, if you set yourself up first thing in the morning to achieve something, then you're going to just feel good throughout the rest of the day. And he even broke it down as simple as like, get up and make your bed, because then at least you accomplished something.
Yeah.
You made your bed, and then exercise first thing in the morning. So I kind of, replaced those acts with, all right, get up and do something creative, something on the drums. So then if you do nothing else for the rest of the day, you don't feel like you lost the chance to become a better drummer.
I asked Mike about his self-care routine for staying in shape both physically and mentally, and he says his answer to that problem is boring. But it's such a great reminder that self-care is so important and truly basic, just basic habits. It really is something we need to do for ourselves. It'll make us better artists, make us more creative. You can't even have good practice without it, so do take care of yourself, and it'll help you take care of those around you. Here's what Mike had to say about his own self-care.
The boring answer is I really think eating well, exercising, and being heavily high throughout the day seems to be, I just started, drinking water first thing in the morning, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. And I thought it was like, all right, it's a placebo effect. It's not really going to do anything. But I literally do feel the cobwebs kind of clear away within 10 minutes of hydrating in the morning. So that kind of helps no matter what. If I play late at night, if I'm playing in the city until midnight, I don't get home until 1:30 or 2. Got to be at work at 9. It's hard to get out of bed at 7 a.m. But inevitably, after I have a glass of water, a cup of coffee with some coconut oil in it, I feel pretty close to full speed. So that my diet has definitely been refined to be much more healthy as opposed to when I was in my 20s. I exercise regularly, so that kind of staves off any back pain and shoulder pain and stuff that can happen from just being exhausted and gigging.
Yeah.
That's largely it. And I don't drink alcohol very often anymore, especially at gigs. That used to be the thing, because that would just make the dehydration even worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nothing really for me. It's nothing too crazy, other than I just try to take care of myself throughout the week. So when I have those 1 or 2 gigs, I'm going to be okay. I'm not running on empty by the time I get to the gig. I'm kind of full steam ahead, play the gig. That might get me down to half a tank the next day, but I kind of recover pretty quickly at this point. It's not exciting. It's certainly not a rock star thing. But even when I was touring, I did 6 weeks on the road, and it was pretty brutal. It was 3 of us jammed into an SUV with all of our gear, and we played like 35 dates in those 6 weeks. So days off, basically our days off are travel dates to get 8 hours to the next city. So at first I was like, I don't know if my body's going to be able to handle it, because I do have kind of chronic lower back issues just from being slightly taller and having to get into small cars and airplanes and stuff. It always kind of aggravates it. But all of us were just so nerdy. We were in the gym in the morning, like we weren't out super late. We would play the gig and be out, as soon as the head, because we were the opening band. As soon as the headlining band was done at 11, we were in the car, driving to the hotel, going to bed. Squeezing in as much rest as we could. And I think that was pretty consistent, with everyone that we crossed while we were on the road. It's like everyone just like, yeah, if you're going to do this, 6 weeks on the road, you can be annihilated by the end, mentally and physically.
I included that bit for you because I personally find that regular exposure to health-related stuff keeps me motivated to take care of myself. Other reminders are things like straining your back, or straining my back, running ourselves down and getting sick. So kids, do take care of yourselves. You'll feel better, look better, and again, you'll play better. This next bit of our conversation is about social media trolling. Mike has a good outlook on negativity online. I have a lot of friends who get wrapped up in the negative crap that trolls say on social. It's really not worth your time, though. What do? Typically, I ignore trolls, but occasionally I respond, but in a civil and sometimes nice way, and that always freaks them out. Trolls will most often apologize and say something like, "I didn't think anyone was reading my comments." That's bullshit. You just weren't ready for someone to engage you. Anyway, we've all had our different experiences with this. Just don't exert too much energy on trolls. Doing so is nothing more than time you'll never get back. Here's what Mike had to say about that. Just to put you at ease, that I bet you a lot of people that do that just do it accidentally, because I just don't think there are that many shitty people out in the world.
I would like to believe you, but I think there are.
There probably are. You're probably right.
You know what? I think the thing is, they're also cowards, because it's easy to do that and run. You know, it's like poking someone and then running and hiding because you don't want to get smacked. It's not. You're hiding behind a username. You know, yeah. And I'm open to criticism. I've had some comments on some of my videos that have some criticism. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. But I'm laughing because Mike Johnston is so funny when he talks about how people are just randomly like, "Yeah, dude, you suck."
Yeah, I mean, it's like, really, does it suck that bad? But for me, it's always like, if you have some constructive criticism, cool. Even though I didn't ask for it, I mean, that's fine. But then I'm like, okay, well, then show me the right way. Like, I'm a big proponent of, okay, if you're going to tell me I'm doing something wrong, or telling someone they're doing something wrong, point me in the direction of how to do it right.
Yeah.
Make it, either show it through your videos or show me an example of someone who's doing it better, so that I can learn something, rather than just flat out saying it's terrible. It's just a bad culture, you know, because you don't have to personally like something for it to still be good.
Next, we talk about marketing. I was fishing for any tips Mike had to offer. He's very humble, though, in his response, or was very humble in his response, but he shared some great insight. About 5 years later, since we spoke, I can see that his plan has paid off. Not saying that it took him 5 years, but he played the long game, and it worked. So, yeah, this one's really worth paying attention to. I'm
really bad at self-promotion. I'm really bad at asking or like cold calling and things like that. And I think thankfully we're in a period in marketing where that's not the most effective way. So I think just organic growth and organic outreach via social media and emails and things is going to be the way. So my YouTube and my Instagram pages were created solely to build of a core group of people who were interested in what I do. So then when I have something to offer, they're already there. So all of these little videos I'm putting up on Instagram and the play-alongs, the Influences series on YouTube was partly to pay homage to the drummers who made me who I am, but also partly to showcase that I could get those drum sounds for anyone who would want them. So if you're like, I want a song that sounds like Police, well, here's my version of a Police song, and I matched the drum sound as closely as I could. Here's Josh Freese on A Perfect Circle. I matched the drum sound as closely as I could. So that content I created, partly for my own, respect for my favorite drummers, but also partly to build a digital resume. Like, this is what I can do. So those are there. And the Instagram thing, the same thing. I just wanted to find people who were just interested in what I already do, what I'm bringing to the table, and not try to sell them anything for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm my goal was to get up to like the 10,000 number or something like that before I even begin pitching the idea of, hey, if you're interested in what I do, I have this other thing going on. I did open it up to Skype lessons probably 4 or 5 months ago. And that was another strategically done thing to see, okay, these people who are watching what I do, how many people actually care enough to then take a lesson with me.
How's that going? You've started doing that recently, Skype lessons.
Yeah, it's going well. I don't have a ton. I'd have half a dozen or so. But it's kind of the perfect, exactly what I was hoping it would be. It's not beginners. It's not children. It's largely professionals, either in drumming or professionals that aren't drummers, like lawyers or something, who like to play drums for fun. but they're all kind of serious about it. And without even asking for that, that's kind of what I got. That's exactly what I wanted, was people who were more, serious about the drums, maybe not to be a professional drummer, but just really serious about getting better at the drums. And that's exactly what I have. And I think those would also be the same people that would be interested in the product of, how can I record my drums better? I think when the time comes where I have a product that I feel like I'm proud about, and it doesn't have to be a purchase thing. Like for me, if I get the website launched and there's just free content on there, then that's when I will start please share it. Like the Instagram stuff, I wanted to just be completely random. And that's a lot of a test too. Like I did a series of little 1-minute jazz lessons probably 6 months or a year ago. It was a challenge. Like, can I teach an effective jazz lesson in 1 minute? And so that was partly, and all the response was like, I can't believe you crammed all that information in 59 seconds. And I didn't feel like I needed more. I'm like, okay, then it worked. Wow. But that was part of it, was just to test the platform. Like, can you teach someone in 1 minute, or at least inspire them to practice something in 1 minute? But the other side of that was, are people interested in jazz drumming at all anymore? Because that was one. That they were? Sadly, it's not. Those had not gotten the responses. The crazy electronic stuff.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
So that was going to be another possible business venture. Like, because there really isn't a jazz drumming educator online that I think's really doing it right. I mean, Peter Erskine just started a few things, and of course he's great. But a year ago, there really wasn't anyone that I felt like I trusted in a certain way, that they were giving me the information, firsthand rather than recycled from other websites or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought that was going to be a possible venture, but then doing this little test, I'm like, I don't know if people really care that much about, because it's such a niche genre and it's such a demanding style of drumming. I haven't given up on it, but that was a test. I think I did like 20 of them maybe over a couple months.
This final segment of our conversation is Mike sharing his advice or tips to musicians. My question was framed in a business context, in that I was looking for like what he's learned from a business perspective. But what he offers is how to get work, how to get gigs. And it's largely advice that came from his father, which we got a kick out of. Anyway, I love this part. I think you will too.
I don't have a lot of experience outside of the music industry, so I can't really say what would or wouldn't work in other worlds. But for my experience, and many other people have affirmed it with telling me the same story, is to be successful in this industry, it's almost all word of mouth and reputation. So professionalism, just basic professionalism, has been such a huge thing for me. Like, I've had numerous gigs where, for instance, an artist was coming in from Australia and her drummer couldn't make the show. And it was like a big showcase show. And he had a prior commitment that he wasn't going to be able to fly in time to get to the show. So I got called on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the show was that Saturday. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like learn these cover songs. It was, here's 40 minutes of original music, all done to a click, all done to sequences. There's no breaks. There's no stops. You have to play it note for note, exactly like we've always been playing it. So for most people, like, okay, I guess I'll get through it. But I took that as like, okay, I'm going to deliver it, and I'm going to have this show so well, under my grasp that she's never once going to think that her regular drummer's not there.
That's inspiring too.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go beyond. I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to make sure that I know the music so well. I'm going to have everything mapped out. I charted everything out note for note, just in case I needed, to make little notes or changes. I ended up reading maybe 35% of the time I was referencing the charts, but it was on an iPad, so you couldn't really tell I had it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't look like a substitute drummer on stage.
Yeah. Everyone's got an iPad in the band pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it was electronic music to begin with, so everyone had computers and stuff. So it didn't really matter. But that for me, and then, she told me after the show, she's like, I didn't think about you once. I'm like, well, good. That was my plan. Like, I didn't want you to be like, you're worrying about cueing me to go to the chorus. Like, you just deliver your songs and I got you covered. And that's, it hasn't turned into any extra work with her, but she stays in touch, and she still
like
if the time comes, I'm sure I would still get another opportunity. And that's happened a few other times.
Mm-hmm.
So I think and all of those gigs have come from one person's recommendation. So I got recommended for the tour that I did for 6 weeks from one guy. And because he heard I did well with that, he recommended me to this pop gig. And then he was at that gig and he saw it went really well. So then he recommended for some session work. So it just became, and then all those people have, good memories of what I did with them. So then they're, recommended me for other things. So it's all, for me, it's just been professionalism, and then just keeping those relationships alive without being pushy. Like I'm not asking him for more work or anything, but right. I like to think that my name is probably one of 5 or 6 that he would, think of first, and delivering what you're asked to deliver and being fun and professional to work with, and, and not asking too much, not asking for more money, not asking for, more work, not being a pain in the butt. This is a lesson that my father taught me very early on. If you're going to do something, do it 100% or don't do it at all. Like that was just a thing. If you're going to play soccer this year, even if you hate it, you're going to play hard, and you're going to finish the season. You're not going to quit. But at the end of the year, you come to me and say, I don't want to play soccer anymore. Fine. So, and that just stuck with me with everything. Like if you're going to be in a band, then be the best band you can be. If you're going to go to school and study music, then be the best music educator that you can possibly be. So that's just, in every way, it stuck with me. Like I try not to half-ass anything.
Yeah, it shows, man. It shows.
There's certainly times when I've had to underperform just because of deadlines or being a little bit stretched thin. But yeah, I think even then in that case, because of those certain work ethic that he instilled in me, that even my less than 100% effort is still probably exceeding what is expected of me, I would hope. So yeah, that just stuck with me very early on. Like if you're going to play baseball, you're going to play and you're going to make the all-star team, and then you can quit this next year. It was just one of those mindsets that really is, at the time I was like, man, you're being kind of brutal here, but it was a great lesson. Like, don't quit and don't do something that you can't commit to.
And that concludes the conversation I had with Mike and the review I did for you. If you want to hear the full episode, the episode number 1 in which these clips came, look for it at unstarvingmusician.com. There will be a link in the show notes with this episode. You can hear me in all my beginner low editing glory. It was the very first one I'd done for the Unstarving Musician. There are also links there to other conversations I've had with Mike. We've had a few. I'm planning to do more episodes like this, so please let me know what you think about hearing more episodes like this one. You can leave your feedback or send me your feedback in written or audio form. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com/contact or find me on the socials at Robonzo Drummer. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features powerful design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, detailed fan data, integrations with social networks, and more. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes a free custom domain name. Try it at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO. If you love what I do, if you find value in what I do here on the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about options for offering your support. The Unstarving Musician accepts direct financial support, and we very much appreciate it, but there are several other ways to support the podcast and help keep it going. Again, you can learn more about those options for supporting the Unstarving Musician podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Did you know you can help other independent musicians find the Unstarving Musician by following or subscribing on your audio platform of choice? Well, now you do, and it really does help. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.